Hello. So let's go over some real basic animation modding. And I have an idea that I want to recreate, and that is this GIF right here. So you can see we have this kid bowing with quite a bit of force and kicking up a cloud of dust. And I think that would be fun to emulate. And to do so, I am going to start with a similar animation. And in this case, I think a good one for that would be Eastern Bow. So if I go ahead and play that, you can see, we have a bow, but it needs some work. First of all, I want to change the angle of the bow. So instead of this sort of 45 degrees, I want to give the character like a full 90-degree bow. The next, I want to create that sense of force to the bow. So, of course, I want to speed up, how fast the bow happens. But what I also think I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of slow down the animation a little bit right before it happens, so that it kind of slows down and then really kind of slams into position. I think that'll give us that sense of force. And then finally, I want to have the character pause for just a second before they start to lean back up. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to adjust the essentially like the pacing or the timing of the animation by moving some keyframes around. We are then going to adjust some bones so that we can, change the positioning of the animation. And then finally, we are going to duplicate a couple of keyframes so that we can add in a bit of a pause. Now, to get started, I need to extract this animation. And to do that, I'm going to use VFX Editor. So if I open that up, I'm going to go to the Pap tab, click this top magnifying glass, go over to Emote. And as I said, I want to use Eastern Bow. So we'll type in East. Here we go. Now, I play an Aura female, but I'm actually not going to select that animation. I am going to use Midlander male. And that is because the Midlander male skeleton is essentially the universal skeleton for the game. Every race can play animations that are based off of the Midlander male skeleton. So that's why we are extracting that animation. So to extract the animation, once I have it selected, I'm going to click this little page icon here that says export as raw file. And we can just put this on my desktop and we'll name it East Bow, like so. So that gives us our PAP file, and we can minimize the game for now. The next thing we need is that actual skeleton. And I'm going to pull this up real quick here. This is the path to the Midlander male skeleton, or the SKLB file. I'll put this in the description so you can copy it if you want to. But the way that we are going to extract that file is by using text tools. Now, to do that, we're going to click Tools, Raw File Operations, Extract Raw File, and then I am going to paste in that path like so, extract file, and then we will call this mid-m and put that on my desktop as well. Now, the next thing that we need is a character model. Or I shouldn't say we need it, but it's going to help us with, we don't want to work with just the skeleton of the animation. We want to be able to check for clipping and things like that. So we're going to create a model. And if you've never done this, the way it works is simply going through text tools here and selecting a piece of gear for each gear slot, and then clicking this Add to FMV button. So I'll remove the hair real quick to demonstrate this. So you can see if I go and I select this hair and I say add to FMV. There we go. It adds it to the character. And now when we click export, this will create, one single file with everything all in place. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll call this mid-M, and then we can export that. And now we are almost ready to get things into Blender. The last step is we need to combine our PAP and our SKLB together. And to do that, we are going to use this program here called XAT. And as you can see, there is a PAP path and an SKLB path. So we will load those in. Here's our eastern bow. And then the Midlander skeleton, like so. Then I'm going to select the animation, go over here to export, and select FBX, export, and then give this a name, east bow, and there we go. Now we can load that into Blender. All right, before we get started actually editing this animation, there's something I want to go over real quick, and that is bone orientation. So if I quickly go to import the animation, and I go to this armature section, you can see that by default, Blender sets the primary bone to the y-axis and the secondary bone to the x-axis. So if I go ahead and hit import, you can see that we get this sort of spiky looking mess here. But in all reality, this is absolutely fine. If I play the animation, it bows, it works. There's nothing inherently wrong with this. The only thing that really matters is that you export this skeleton in the same orientation that you imported it. Having said that, this is not the bone orientation that I'm going to use. So I will hide that and we'll re-import real quick. And what I'm going to do is go to armature and I'm going to swap these around. So I'm going to change the primary bone to the x-axis and the secondary bone to the y-axis. And you can actually set up a preset for this. Over here you'll see operator presets. And if I click on this, you can see I have one for Final Fantasy XIV import. So if I hit restore defaults real quick, you can see we have YX, and then if I go and I click my import, it changes to XY. So you can set that up for yourself if you want. All you have to do is configure things the way you'd like them, and then click this plus sign and give your preset a name. So let's go ahead and import that. And now you can see that this looks a lot different. It's a lot more humanoid. It's a lot more recognizable, right? We can tell where the arms are, the hands, the legs, the feet, the tail, etc. So especially if you're just starting out animating, this can be a bit easier to work with. But again, at the end of the day, it really does not matter. The only thing that really matters is that you export your skeleton in the same orientation that you imported it. And I just wanted to cover that real quick. So let's go ahead and get started importing things. And I'm going to make a new file here. Some people like to just do everything in one single window here. I use Blender for a lot of different things, so I actually like to take advantage of the different tabs. So I'm going to go up to the animation tab here. Now we're going to be working with a model in the 3D viewport here, so I don't need this sort of extra window for the camera. So I'm going to delete that. I will right click here, say join areas, and then I'm going to mouse over the area that I want to get rid of and left click. Now I'm also going to turn my keybinds back on so you can see these. The next thing that I'm going to do is click where this says dope sheet, and I am going to change that to action editor. I, by preference, am a keybind user, so I'm going to try to mention every button I'm pressing, but just in case that I forget to leave something out, you can see what I'm doing with my mouse and, the buttons I'm pressing and things like that down here. The other reason I bring that up is because I'm going to say things like, I'm going to move my mouse here and press this button, or move my mouse over the timeline and press this button. And that actually matters for keybinds. Where your mouse is within Blender can affect keybinds. So I'm not just saying that arbitrarily. It can affect things. All right, so in this case, what I'm going to do in order to clear everything out is I'm going to mouse over what's known as the outliner, or essentially like the list view of all the objects. I'm going to press A to select all, and then X to delete. Now, this is my personal, preference for my animation tab. So what I could actually do here is save this as a separate file. And then I can go and I can reopen this file and it would be set up just like this, ready to go. I don't have to do any of that configuration again. Okay, let's get things imported here. First thing I'm going to do is right click and create a new collection. And then I'm going to go to File, Import, FBX, and then we'll go to my desktop, select the animation, and I will use my import preset and click import. There we go. Now I need to add in the model. So I'm going to deselect this, right click, new collection, and then go to File, Import, FBX. And this time I have a shortcut set up for the full model folder, but whenever you create a full model folder, it will be within your text tools directory. So just go ahead and look for that. It'll be there. I just have mine set up so I can get to it more quickly. So here's that mid M that I made, and we will select this. Again, make sure to use the import preset and say import. Okay. Now that we've got that in, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to this output properties tab that looks kind of like a printer, and we're going to change the frame rate here from 25 to 30 because Final Fantasy plays back at 30 frames per second, and we want to match that up. Otherwise, things aren't going to look quite right. Okay. With that done, what we want to do now is we want to attach the model to the animation. So if I select the animation here and I go ahead and play it, you will see that only the skeleton is moving and not the model, which isn't what we want. So in order to attach the model, the first thing that I'm going to do is, again, make sure I select the en route of my animation. Then I'm going to go here into my timeline and I'm going to select the en route track. And then I'm just going to press the letter X to delete it. What that does is if I go to the properties tab here, is it clears the keyframes from the scale, rotation, etc. And so now what I can do is if I go to my model and I select its en route, I can go here to this little icon and select the name of my animation and click this, and it snaps right into place. Now, if I had not cleared those keyframes, you can see they're yellow again, so that means they've been keyframed. If I were to go now and try to attach my model, he's going to fall on his face. And that's not what we want. So that's why we clear the keyframes from the en route. So let's just go ahead and do that again. We're going to select the en route track, press X, and then go to our model and select the animation. Now, we can actually rename this animation too. So by default, XAT will give it this random name, en route XAT0. If you're working with multiple animations here, that might help you keep track of things. But in this case, we only have the one, and so I'm just going to leave it the way it is. It doesn't really matter, but I did want to mention it. Now that that's done, what we can do is we can get rid of the original animation. So I'm going to right click on the folder and I'm going to say delete hierarchy. And then if you see, this will still play. So we're good to go. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to adjust this end frame. This doesn't have any effect on the export, but if I play this animation, you'll see it's just going to keep running, right? And that's not very helpful for us. So setting the end frame is like where it's going to loop. So we're going to move this. You can either click and drag on here, or you can simply enter in a number. So this is 136 frames, and we can just enter it like that. And now when I play the animation, you can see that it will loop right at the end, just like that. So that's looking better. I want to close this little side pane here, so I'm going to keep my mouse over the timeline and press N, and away it goes. I also don't need to see like every single keyframe for every single bone here. That's not really helpful. So what I'm going to do is just minimize this summary, because at the end of the day, all we care about is kind of the skeleton as a whole. All right, so let's get into actually editing this animation. Now, I said that I want to kind of slow down the beginning of the bow, because I think that will help add to the kind of sense of impact. So let's grab our marker here and scrub through and look for kind of where the bow gets started. So right about there-ish, we'll say like frame 30. So what I can do here is I'm going to press Alt-A, which is like the opposite of pressing A. A selects everything, Alt-A deselects everything. Now I can go over here to select and say after current frame, and you'll see this grabs everything after my marker. Then I can right click and drag, and we'll move this out, I don't know, 10 frames or so. And that should hopefully give us a bit of a, it'll slow things down a little bit. And the cool thing about Blender is that it actually can interpolate between keyframes here. So if I drag my marker, you can see that we do actually have some movement going on. It's not just jumping from point A to point B. It actually is usually smart enough, to figure out how to get there. So let's go ahead and play that real quick. Okay, I think that should work. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to delete this keyframe right after that, kind of the end of our pause. It'll hopefully make a little more sense in a second here, but it's just going to, I want to make sure to keep track of this keyframe. So getting rid of the one next to it will just kind of help me isolate it, and so I know exactly where it is. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to look for the sort of the midpoint of the bow. And to help do that, I'm going to go into side view. So we can do that by mousing over the 3D window and pressing numpad 3. And then you'll see that snaps us into side view like this. And then I am going to grab my marker and scrub through here and look for where the animation, okay, so it stops about there, and then he's coming back up. So we'll call that like frame 70. And now we are going to adjust his positioning. So if you know the name of the bone that you're looking for, what you can do is you can go up to this search field here, and you can just type it in. So in this case, I am looking for Sebo A. So if I just type in Sebo like this, here we go. Here is Sebo A. And actually, I need to go into pose mode in order to actually move that bone. So we can go to pose mode by clicking and selecting pose mode there, or we can simply press Control Tab, and that will take us into pose mode as well. Okay, back here, we'll select Sebo A. And then if I press R for rotate, you can see he's bending at the waist, which is what I want. Now, in the case that you don't know the bone you're looking for by name, one thing you can do is you can go to this object data properties. It looks kind of like a stick figure. Click on that and go to the viewport display section, and select this box for in front. Now this will show you all the bones no matter how you're looking at the model. And so you can see this is that Sebo A button, and it also says that up here in the corner. But again, we'll go into side view, and if I rotate, then there we go. So again, I mentioned this earlier, I like to use keybinds. If you don't, you can use the toolbar as well. So to bring the toolbar back, press T, and then you can use things like move and scale and rotate. So, you know, I could use the rotate tool and I could grab this and I can move him that way as well. But that's up to you. Again, I prefer to just use keybinds. And another thing you can do with keybinds is you can designate the axis that you want to, in this case, we're using rotate. So I can press R. Well, I have to select my bone first. I can press R, and then I can press X. And then no matter how I move my mouse, he's only going to rotate about the X axis. And then if I right click to cancel, I can do the same thing with a different axis. So if I press R and then I press Y, you can see no matter how I move my mouse, he's only going to turn about the Y axis. Let's get him into position here. So R, and then I'm going to press X, and we will line him up with the kind of grid line back there. And we'll go ahead and left click to confirm. Now I'm going to uncheck this in front box because it's kind of getting in my way. And now I can see that we have some arms clipping through the legs here, and I want to fix that. Those bones, or the bone that controls sort of the forearm there, is called Ude B. So I'm going to type in Ude, like so. And here you can see we have an Ude BL and an Ude BR. So left arm, right arm. And we can actually rotate these both at the same time. So I'm going to select the left bone, I'm going to hold Control, and then I'm going to click on the right bone. And now if I press R and rotate, we can move both arms at the same time. And I will left click to confirm, and there we go. So once we have got our model into position, what we want to do is hover over the 3D window here, press A to select all the bones, and then we're going to hover over the timeline, press I for insert keyframes, and then select all channels. That will set basically a new keyframe, and if I play this animation back real quick, you should see that at frame 70, he's going to snap down into place real quick. So if I go ahead and play that, boop, there he goes. So that got placed correctly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let Blender interpolate again. So that's why I wanted to isolate that frame 40, is it's just going to make my job easier here. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and then I can right click and I can drag a box around all these frames. There we go. And now I will press X, or excuse me, delete. And there we go. No more keyframes there. And let's check this out again. Now, instead of that real quick snap at frame 70, he should bow smoothly all the way down. Perfect. Now we're going to kind of repeat the process going the other direction. So I am going to look for the top of the bow, and I'm actually going to go into front view for this. So again, with my mouse in the 3D window, I'm going to press numpad 1 this time for front view, and that'll snap us into the front. And you can see here that when he's done bowing, he kind of steps away. So I am going to zoom in on the feet here, and we will look for, okay, so he's bowing, he's standing back up, and now that foot is starting to move. So we'll call that like frame 100. And then again, I want to keep frame 70. That was that midpoint that we set. So I'm going to right click and drag a box around these, and then press delete and get rid of them. And now let's go ahead and play that back. We'll zoom out here. all the way down, and then back up nice and smooth. Wonderful. Okay, now let's speed things up a bit, because that bow is much too slow. So what I'm going to do is simply select this keyframe here, and then I can just right click and I can drag it forward. So let's go ahead and do that. And we want this to be real fast. So I'm going to guess right about there. And then we'll go ahead and play. Cool. That looks pretty good. Bam. All right. I like it. Now, I mentioned that I want to have the character pause there for a second. So again, I'm going to make sure I have this keyframe selected. I'm going to then press Shift D to duplicate, and then I can drag out this keyframe for a while. So we'll say about that long. And now again, if I play this, he should stay in that position for that duration. And there we go. Okay, we're getting there. The next thing I want to do is he bows nice and quick, but then he stands up real slow. So we're going to grab the rest of these keyframes and we're going to slide them forward. So let's drag a box around these, and then we can move, we'll say about there. And then I'm going to adjust my end frame a little bit like so. And now let's check this out. There we go. That looks pretty good. Pause. Good quick bow. Do I even want to speed that up a little bit, maybe? Maybe like 1 frame. Okay. That's looking fine. Now, let's just rotate around here and make sure things are looking okay. I have a feeling I'm going to adjust these arms. Yeah, they're a little bit out in front of him. So if I go ahead and I hide these bones, we'll be able to see this a little better. Yeah. I guess I could move those arms in a little bit before he starts the bow. So we will go to this frame here, and let's move those arms. So I'm going to turn the skeleton back on. We're still on Ude, so I can just grab Ude L and R, and then rotate in a bit like so. And then A for all the bones. Mouse over the timeline. I for insert keyframes and all channels, like this. I'm actually not sure that really looks any better. Now his arms kind of move a little bit strange. So let's try this. Let's move a keyframe up a bit from here. And we will adjust this one as well. So we will go like that and grab both those bones again. I have to enable this so I can rotate them. L and Control and then R, and move those. Now A, I, all channels. And let's check this out. Okay. I could, honestly, this is just kind of cleanup work. I could spend another hour doing this, but it's not really necessary. This is fine for now. So we are ready to export. So to do that, of course, we are going to go to File, and then Export, FBX. We're going to put this on my desktop. We'll call this one Fast Bow, like so. And then again, I have a preset set up for this, but essentially what we're going to do is we're going to change the axes, but we also want to uncheck Add Leaf Bones. So you can see by default, we have YX and we have leaf bones. If I go up here and I use my export preset, you can see it is now XY and we do not have leaf bones. So that's what we want, and I am going to click export. There we go. Now we can go back to XAT. So we'll open that back up here. We are going to go to import file, and we are going to select our fast bow, like so. Open. And then we're going to select our track and then click import. And now it tells us we imported 125 frames. And that's important because we started with like 136 frames. So we need to change that. And that is done by going to the timeline here. We're going to click on our actor, and we are going to look for the C009 track. And generally it's going to be on track 0, but it could be on one of these other ones. But if I click track 0, here we go. Here is C009. And we are going to change these frames right here to how many we imported, which was 125. So we will enter that in like so. And we are good to go. So we can save this. So we'll save, and then again, we will call this one fast bow, like that. And now we have our fast bow PAP, and we can go back to the game. Let's open VFX Editor again, and we will go to the PAP tab, and over here. Now, this time I am going to click local file, and I will load in that fast bow PAP. So there we go. And now I can close this window, and we'll go to the bottom magnifying glass, emote, and then eastern bow. And here I can demonstrate that even though we just did that animation, with a Midlander model and a Midlander skeleton, if I go ahead and select a raw female here, and then I click update, if I play this animation, it plays just like we designed it. So that is why we do that. Is now essentially what I could do is I could go into documents, I could hit new, I could reload that local file, and I could add in another race, and I could, I could replace all these if I wanted to. Or I could go into like advanced settings and use file redirects. But that's why we did things that way. That's why we use a Midlander, because it will work for every race. So let's go ahead and we'll delete that. Let's go back here. And just for fun, let's go ahead and add in a VFX. So to do that, I'm not going to go over like how to find VFX. I have other videos on VFX if you're interested in that. But essentially what I did was just use the VFX tab, and I browsed through a couple of things until I found one that I thought was appropriate, and I copied the path to it. So to add that path in, we're going to go to animations, select the animation, actors, select our actor. Now we're going to add a new track by clicking this plus sign. We're going to click new and then go up here to VFX. And now I am going to grab that VFX path that I found, and we will paste that in here. Now, we had the bow start somewhere around, it was like frame 33-ish, I think. So we'll try that out. That time field is the beginning of when the VFX will start. Now we need to change both of these 255 bind points to -1. So -1, and then down here and -1, like so. And if I hit update and play this, okay, that plays way too early. So we'll change that to like 40. Update and play it again. It's still like a frame or two fast. So we'll say like 42. update. And there we go. That looks nice. So just we'll change view here and bam. All right. I like it. So I think that is mission accomplished. Now to export this, all we're going to do is go to export. You can choose text tools or penumbra. It's up to you. I like to do text tools, but ultimately it's your choice. We'll give this a name. We'll call it like fast bow. And then I can put in my name like this. And then since all we've done in this case is change the PAP, that's the only box we need to check. And then we can click export. We'll put it again, let's say on my desktop and say, okay. And there we go. Now we have our mod pack. So I hope that this was helpful and you can start making your own custom animations and things and, have a bit of fun.